October 5th, 2026, Las Vegas. It's not the kind of thing you'd expect to hear from a retired old man. That's what my daughter always said whenever I started talking about 1972, Area 51, and what really happened down there. But today, I don't give a damn. I need to let it all out before the government decides I've said too much. I was a young soldier, 25 years old, knee-deep in a mission that, at the time, no one explained to me properly. And let me tell you, buddy, you're never really prepared to see hell up close. I remember it like it was yesterday. The smell of rusty metal in the air, the sound of heavy boots clanking on the narrow concrete corridor. The place felt like a cold tomb. We took an elevator down, more than 20 floors below the surface. My partner, John, was by my side, shaking. And it wasn't just from the cold. "Man, I don't like this," he whispered. Neither did I. No one told us what to expect, but rumors were already making the rounds among the soldiers. Non-human beings, gruesome experiments, and an entire wing sealed off for national security reasons. As the elevator descended, the tension only grew. I heard a creak, followed by a loud snap, and the light flickered for a second. "Damn it," I muttered. Sweat was dripping down my forehead, not from heat, but from pure adrenaline. When the doors opened, I was hit by the stench of decay, like rotting flesh baking under the sun. It was a heavy stench, the kind that seems to cling to your nostrils. The first thing we saw was a room full of capsules, like incubators, but of a kind I had never seen. Something was moving inside them, and it looked human. Almost. "This is a bigger mess than I thought," John mumbled, his voice shaky. I knew he was right. Inside one of the capsules, there was a woman, seemingly sedated, connected to a series of tubes. And then I saw something else. Behind her was a massive shadow, a skeletal creature with dark skin, an elongated head, and sharp teeth, looking far from human. It was like it had stepped straight out of a nightmare. "My God, what the hell is that?" I asked, trying to hold back the panic. John didn't answer. He just stood there, staring, wide-eyed. Suddenly, the creature moved, scratching the inside of the capsule. The sound was deafening, like steel claws scraping against glass. "We need to get out of here," John said, stepping back. But it was too late. The alarm blared, loud and frantic, like the building itself was screaming in fear. Red lights started flashing, and a siren echoed down the corridor. "They've escaped!" I heard a voice on the radio, filled with despair. "Repeat, the experiments have escaped." Shit had officially hit the fan. That creature, that xenomorph, as we called it on the base, broke the capsule with ridiculous strength, and the viscous fluid gushed all over the floor. I drew my weapon and shouted to John, "Get to the corridor now." I fired at the creature, but it was too fast, moving agilely, almost like a shadow. "Run, damn it!" I yelled again, and John finally reacted. We ran like mad, lights flashing, the ground vibrating from explosions, and screams echoing through the radio. But they weren't the only screams. The sound of women, screaming in pain, filled the air like a hellish symphony. There was no turning back now. I knew that if we stayed there, it would be the end of us. We had barely started running when one of the xenomorphs leapt from the ceiling, grabbing John's shoulder. He screamed, a sound that still echoes in my nightmares. "Help me, Elliot!" he shouted, his face contorted in pain as those sharp claws dug into his flesh. Instinct took over, and I emptied my entire magazine into the creature, each shot echoing like thunder in the concrete halls. The thing let go of John, but it didn't fall. Instead, it let out a guttural growl that sounded more like a sinister laugh. And then, it vanished into the shadows. "Jesus, John, you're bleeding a lot," I said, trying to drag him through the corridor. Blood was pouring down his uniform, pooling on the floor. John coughed, spitting blood, but he still tried to walk. "Just go, Elliot, just go," he whispered, his voice weakening. I didn't want to leave him, but I knew that if I stayed longer, we'd both be dead. "I'm not leaving you, damn it," I shouted, grabbing his arm and dragging him faster. The sirens were still wailing, and the sound of metal footsteps on concrete was getting closer. They were after us, and I knew we didn't have much time. We reached a crossroads of tunnels. On one side, a metal staircase that led even further down. On the other, a reinforced security door marked "Restricted Access." John looked at me with almost lifeless eyes. "Go that way. It's the only chance," he whispered, pointing to the stairs. I hesitated for a second. The descent looked like a straight path to hell, but there was no choice. I squeezed his hand and started down, feeling the cold metal against my sweaty hands. Down below, a greenish glow emanated from somewhere, lighting up the darkness like a warning of imminent danger. The ground shook again, but this time the impact was different, like a muffled explosion. I heard screams over the radio, someone saying that more specimens had escaped, and then I heard a terrible sound from above, the sound of claws scraping against the metal ladder. They were following us. "They won't stop, Elliot. They're predators," John whispered over the radio, as if he knew he wasn't getting out alive. I looked up, seeing the silhouettes of the creatures getting closer. "Go to hell!" I shouted, firing upwards as I ran down the last steps. At the bottom of the tunnel, I saw what I could only describe as a nest. There were cocoons everywhere, attached to the concrete walls. Inside them were human women, some still alive, others not. It was a scene of pure horror. The women's breathing was labored, as if they were struggling to stay conscious. The sound of slime dripping and the stench of decomposing flesh were suffocating. My heart was pounding so hard, it felt like it was going to burst from my chest. I knew that if I didn't end this now, there would be no turning back. I reloaded my weapon and pushed forward. In the middle of the nest stood a larger, more monstrous figure than the others. The Queen, as the scientists called her. She turned toward me, her black eyes reflecting an ancient hunger. I didn't hesitate. I unloaded everything I had, each bullet cutting through the air like a bolt of fury. The creature advanced, her heavy steps reverberating through the ground, as if the very place trembled in fear. The Queen moved like a tangible nightmare, her heavy steps echoing through every corner of the tunnel. The bullets I fired seemed to barely scratch her thick, dark carapace. My heart was racing. Sweat was running down my back, and my breathing was getting heavier. "It's now or never, damn it," I muttered to myself, knowing there was no retreat left. I was out of ammo and out of options. I decided to go for hand-to-hand combat, something that seemed insane in those circumstances. But it was the only chance to prevent the Queen from making more victims. That's when I noticed something on the Queen's back. A kind of inflated sack filled with a greenish, pulsating liquid. It looked like her weak point. "This is it," I thought, and then used the last grenade I had, the one I had saved for the worst-case scenario. I ran toward the Queen, leaping over one of the women trapped in a cocoon, and attached the grenade to the pulsating sack, pulling the pin with a quick motion. "Go to hell, you bitch!" I shouted, throwing myself back with all the strength I had left. The explosion was instantaneous and brutal, shaking the entire tunnel. Pieces of alien flesh flew everywhere, and a green acidic liquid dripped down the walls. The Queen let out a deafening scream before collapsing, her body falling like a bag of broken bones. The ground trembled, and a wave of heat and the stench of sulfur filled the air. I tasted the metallic tang of blood in my mouth, and my vision began to blur. But the most important thing was that I was alive, at least for now. I got up with difficulty, my legs wobbly and my head pounding with pain. "John, are you there?" I asked over the radio, hoping to hear my partner's voice. But there was no response, just static. My hands were shaking, and I knew what that meant. The son of a bitch didn't make it out. I dragged myself back through the tunnel, my body exhausted, and my mind still processing everything that had happened. Along the way, I saw John's body lying there, surrounded by a pool of blood. I knelt beside him, feeling an immense emptiness taking over me. "I'm sorry, partner," I whispered, my voice cracking. I tried. I carried John's body in my arms, a nearly impossible task with the little strength I had left. But I wasn't going to leave him behind. He deserved a proper burial, even if it was up there, where the sun still shone and the world seemed less cruel. The climb was long, filled with obstacles and debris scattered along the way. The corridors were empty, as if the base had been abandoned. Finally, I reached the surface, where the blue sky shone in contrast to the chaos we had left behind. The fresh air was a relief to my lungs, but the weight of guilt and loss was still unbearable, and that's why I tell this story. Even knowing they might come after me and my family, the truth needs to be known, even if it hurts. They'll deny it, like they always have. They'll say it's just another crazy old man trying to get attention. But believe me, hell exists, and it's hidden beneath the Nevada desert. So, if you ever hear about alien experiments and missing women, know that there's probably more truth than you'd like to admit. This is my last confession. My name is Elliot, and I've seen hell up close.